Welcome everyone to Daf Yomi 1 week at a time, Masachet Nedarim. This is our penultimate class. Next week we will be finishing Masachet Nedarim. It's very exciting. Please make sure to have a sium or some sort of party to celebrate the finishing of this Masachet. This is our 12th lesson, and today we are going to be reviewing Daf 78 through 84. We're in the middle of a discussion on Daf 78 about making sure that you use proper language, meaning we've been discussing two types of annulling a vow. One is the sage who annuls a vow, and the other is the husband or the father who revokes the vow. And each one needs to make sure that they use the proper language in order to affect the vow that they are trying to affect. And this is based on the verse, Zeh hadavar. This is the idea or the word, but it's literally the word. And therefore, the Gemara mentions that we need to make sure that the words we use, we take them very, very careful. We use them very carefully. Interesting, since we are in Masachet Nedarim. The Gemara continues on 78 and says we also have this idea of Zeh hadavar. This is the thing when speaking about sacrifices outside of the temple. And this teaches that it applies to all Jewish people, meaning there is a prohibition to bring a sacrifice outside of the temple. In Hebrew, it's called shchutei chutz, right? Chutz meaning outside. And this applies to a priest, a kohen, a Levi, or a Yisrael. So too, when dealing with vows, any Jew can annul a vow, right? A priest, a kohen, a Levi, or Yisrael. The heads of the tribe are mentioned explicitly for both vows and for sacrificing outside of the temple. And therefore, the Gemara learns that with vows, even 3 laymen can annul a vow. Remember, we talked about going to a sage, or 3 laymen, or even 1 expert can annul the vow by themselves. With sacrificing outside, it's to teach that one can annul a vow of sanctification, meaning if you sanctify something, you can have that annulled. Beit Shammai actually say no, they disagree with this, and they don't use the word Zeh hadavar for this theme. The next thing the Gemara discusses, it says that the verse says that Moshe declared the festivals of God to the Jewish people. It doesn't seem to include Shabbat or vows, meaning that these were not declared to the Jewish people. The Gemara says, no, actually, it does include these things. However, there are differences, right? A festival is sanctified by the court, right? Not specifically the festival, but Rosh Chodesh, right? The first day of the month is sanctified by the court, meaning the people, as opposed to Shabbat. A person does not sanctify Shabbat on their own, meaning whether or not you light candles, it's still Shabbat. And again, a festival is sanctified by an expert. Vows don't need an expert to annul them, right? Again, as we said, you can have 3 people who are lay people to annul a vow. Okay, next topic is, what if a husband is silent about the vow of his wife? If you remember, we discussed that the husband has the ability to revoke his wife's vow, and we said he has that day to do it, and he has 2 options. He can uphold the vow, lekayem, he can uphold it, or he can mefer, he can revoke it. And now the Gemara is bringing a 3rd option. What happens if he's quiet? So the Gemara seems to infer from here, why is he quiet? because he wants to distress her, right? And if he does that, meaning he's not quiet because he agrees with it, he's quiet because he, kind of wants to make her um, suffer, let's say, he can actually revoke it even 10 days later, right? He usually only has 1 day because we don't know his intention. Another source implies that silence is like upholding the vow, and therefore you do not have 10 days, you only have that day. Um, and then the Gemara says, no, it really depends on the intent, right? There's silence with intent to confirm, as opposed to silence with the intent to revoke. And therefore, we have to understand what the intent is. And a third case, which is silence without any intent, right? Stam. Right? Stam means we don't know what the intent is, or the husband doesn't know what his intent is. Hasn't decided yet. So then the question is stam, right? No intent, like upholding it. Excuse me. Excuse me. Is it like he's upholding it and not revoking it? Um, and the Gemara says, well, let's see, right? You can uphold a vow in your heart, but you can't revoke a vow in your heart. So therefore, if he revokes or annuls it, right, you can't change your mind. If he upholds the vow, you can petition to annul it. But if he revokes it, you can't annul it. So that's a little bit about silence. Um, it is important to, well, let's finish and then I'll say something. Daf 79, there's a verse that speaks about the husband keeping quiet, right, about this silence. And then the question is, what is his intent, right? Maybe the silence is with the intent to distress his wife, and then he can still revoke it only that day. We throw out the idea of 10 days. Or there's, right, so basically the Gemara summarizes that there are 3 verses that speak about silence. One is silence with intent to uphold the vow. One is silence with intent that we're not sure about. And the other is, or maybe to revoke. And one is silence with intent to distress the wife. We do allow the husband to revoke the vow the night before the end, or right before the end of Shabbat, even though it won't affect Shabbat, meaning even if the vow has nothing to do with Shabbat. And this proves that remaining silent is like confirmation, and therefore you do not have, right, the husband does not have 10 days in order to revoke the vow. He only has till that day, till sunset, and that's it, till the end of the day. And with that, we end the 10th chapter. Now, I've been getting questions about, what's really behind this idea of making these vows, of the husband revoking the vows. And I think it's really important to understand, and I think that this is one of the lessons of Nedarim, that making a neder in the first place is already a red flag in a relationship. Meaning, if there's a conflict, it's really important to resolve that conflict and not, right, these Nedarim seem to be inflammatory remarks, generally said in the heat of the moment. And therefore, right, we have this backdoor ability to annul or revoke the vow because did you really mean it or not? But I think really deeper is the understanding that there's something wrong in this relationship, right? Whether it was about neighbors, right, who say, I'm never coming into your house again, or it's between a couple or a father and a daughter. This is really, I think, a very serious topic, and definitely something that I think is a bigger conversation as to why the person is taking the vow in the first place. Okay, let's start the 11th and final chapter. The Mishnah tells us that vows, what types of vows can the husband revoke? right? We talked about timing, right? Who, we talked about when, but let's talk about what. And it's important to understand that it's not any vow, but it's very specific vows, right? One is things that afflict her, right? From the word, right? In Hebrew, we say inui nefesh, right? Something that afflicts her, that causes her suffering, right? So if she says, I am not going to take a shower, right, for the next 2 months, I'm not going to put on any makeup. So then that seems to be inui nefesh, right? Affliction. Or the Gemara says, no, maybe it's if she says, right, I won't eat any fruit, right? That seems to be an affliction, right? You can't go through life not eating fruit, though some of my children might disagree with this. But this seems to be a very serious thing, as opposed to if she says, right, I won't eat any fruit from this country or that store, right? That he cannot revoke because he'll just get her food from a different country or from a different store. The Gemara explains this, right? There's a verse that says, right, Beino leveina, right, between the husband and the wife, or between the father and the daughter. It means that the vows have to affect the relationship directly, right? And then if they do, then the husband or the father can revoke the vow, right? Things like, right, again, um, things like this that affect the relationship um, are can be revoked. But interestingly, if they get divorced, the vow goes back into effect, right? As opposed to vows, right? This is when we're talking about things that have to do with just the relationship. But if we're talking about a vow that's inui nefesh, right? She's trying to maybe cause harm to herself, then when he revokes that, they're revoked completely, even if they get divorced. Um, or another opinion is that it does, right? Sometimes they do kick in after, and sometimes they don't. That's a machloket. If there is inui nefesh, this affliction, you can, right? He can revoke it for himself and for others, but vows that have to do with their relationship, right? He can only revoke it for himself, but not others, right? So let's say she says, I'm not going to shower, right? What type of vow is this, right? As opposed to, right, I won't eat any, right? What could be the vow? Maybe she'll say, I won't eat any fruits if I bathe. So the Gemara says no. So then don't, right, you know, then she won't eat fruit, and then it's not an inui nefesh. So the Gemara wants to understand, what are we talking about? Daf 80 tells us, right? Let's say she says, I won't get any benefit and not bathe forever, right? That is inui nefesh, right? To say I will not bathe forever, I will not get any benefit from this, or she won't bathe and she decides, right, she'll just be repulsive. Um, Right, or sorry, or maybe we'll say, okay, great. So don't bathe. You'll be repulsive, right? You'll smell, but that's not inui nefesh. So the Gemara says, right, the condition isn't the inui nefesh. Rather, right, what does she say? I'm never going to shower if I shower today, right? So now, then we're talking about, right, apples and apples as opposed to apples and oranges. Um, or again, right, the Gemara says, okay, so don't shower today and shower the rest of your life. So what happens if you don't shower one day? That's not inui nefesh. Or maybe she says, right, I will never shower if, right, I will never shower if I, right, if I shower today in foul water, right? We don't want her to shower in bad smelling water, right? Or maybe she takes an oath, a shvu'ah, that she won't shower, and maybe that is the case. Let's say she says, I won't get benefit from makeup, right? I won't put on any makeup if I adorn myself today, right? And then she makes an oath that I won't adorn myself, right? And again, these things become complicated, right? So now the Gemara says, is not showering inui nefesh? Again, interesting, right? For Anyway, okay, right? Is not showering inui nefesh, right? Is it again, right? It's prohibited on Yom Kippur, so it seems that it is inui nefesh, right? But however, you don't get karet for not showering, meaning it's a different punishment than if you, let's say, eat or drink. And because it's a different punishment, it seems to imply that it's not an affliction of the soul. And the Gemara says, no, it's not right, meaning it's not a recognizable affliction like eating and drinking, but when you're dealing with a vow, it is seen as inui nefesh. And from here, the Gemara goes off on a little bit of a tangent since we're talking about the importance of bathing. The Gemara tells us a case of two cities that share the same spring water, right? It goes through one city and then it goes to the next city. So let's say it originates in one city, they can use all of it to, right? Let's say there's not enough to like there's not enough for both cities, and we're going to change the scenario as we continue. So if there's not enough for the first, right, basically the first city can use all of it to survive, and they don't need to share with the next city if it's about life and death, right? If there isn't enough, right? But if there is enough water for the other city to drink, but not for the first city to do their laundry, so then they need to share the water. Or no, says the top of Daf 81. No, you don't have to share the water because the first city, if they have dirty clothing, it's an inui, right? It is an affliction of the soul, and therefore they can use that water to launder their clothing. So it seems here that it says that it's more important to wash your clothing than shower. Um, and interesting, here the Gemara tells us that not showering leads to sores or, right, some affliction to the body, but not wearing clean clothes leads to dementia, which, again, here the Gemara says, right, sores there are cures for, but dementia there isn't. I think it's an interesting idea to think about. What does that mean that wearing dirty clothing leads to dementia? I wonder if maybe it's the other way around, right? Maybe they saw people who didn't have full cognitive abilities and therefore they were wearing the same clothing over and over again. I think that's just interesting to think about. The Gemara continues, since we're talking about water flowing, right? Torah. So the Gemara tells us that Torah is going to come from poor people, right? People who are lowly. And it's another interesting comment the Gemara says is that it's uncommon for Torah scholars to have children who are Torah scholars. And the Gemara gives 5 reasons. I think it's just very interesting to think about these 5 reasons. So the Gemara says, what are the reasons? You shouldn't think, right, maybe other people or maybe the children shouldn't think that it's genetic, right? That, oh, being a Torah scholar is something that you just inherit from your parents. Another reason is that so the kids won't assume that they're going to be Torah scholars, right? That would lead to arrogance, and we don't want the children to be arrogant. That they shouldn't take advantage of their father's status in the community, or because they don't say the blessings over the Torah, right? We know that every morning we say 3 blessings over the Torah. And here I think the Gemara means that they are not learning Torah for the proper reasons, right? They're doing it maybe because they were told to, maybe because they were expected to, and that is not the reason that Israel, and it mentions this idea as well. Um, from here, we see that there are 2 types of vows, as we mentioned Okay, can everyone hear me?
Can hear you now. We missed you 2 minutes.
Okay.
Can hear you.
Yeah, I know. Okay, great. Thank you. I lost internet. Wait, why can't you see me? Can't see me. Ezra, do you know why you can't see me?
It's more important that we can hear you. Go.
Okay. Okay. All right. So here, hold on one second. We were in the middle of talking. Okay. So, we were talking about two types of vows, right? That the woman can make. Again, an affliction, right? Inui nefesh, or something between the husband and the wife. Now, both of these can be revoked by the husband. Um, and now, again, as we mentioned, right, not showering is either inui nefesh, right? Is it something that she's suffering herself, or is it something between them, right? Meaning he wants to be married to somebody who showers, or is it neither, right? And again, the question is, it depends. If it is neither, then the husband cannot revoke it. But if it is one or the other, then the husband can. Um, okay, let's continue. The husband can revoke vows that are, as we mentioned, inui nefesh, whether it's between them or just between her and others, right? Which is important to understand that it's two separate categories. But if it isn't inui nefesh, he can revoke vows only that have to do with him, but not if it has to do with something between her and other people, right? So if she says, I won't make your bed, or I won't pour your drink, or I won't wash your hands and feet. These are actually three things. We'll learn this in, I think we mentioned this in Masachet Ktuvot. These are the three things that a woman needs to do, right, in order to have a, I guess, intimate relationship with her husband. And therefore, he doesn't need to revoke these vows because she has to do them, right? Or he should still revoke them, anyway. But really, she cannot take a vow on something that she is obligated to do, right? Let's say she says, I won't sleep with you. Um, he can revoke it because it's between them. She can vow against getting benefit from relations with him, and he can revoke that as well. If she says, you can't benefit from having relations with me, he can actually force her to have relations because she can't forbid him from that benefit. I think that these are difficult lines to read. I think that, in our group, we discussed this as well. It seems that there's definitely something wrong with this relationship. And why isn't someone saying, oh, they just need to get divorced? Which I'm hoping that that does happen. But these are definite red flags, meaning there is something very wrong between this husband and wife. The A Torah scholar cannot revoke his own vows. Um, and now the Gemara asks, right, again, is having relations, is it seen as inui nefesh, because now she will not get benefit from it? Or is it beino leveina, it's something between the two of them, because it's between the two of them. So Daf 82 tells us, right, if she says, I won't have relations with any Jew, so then the husband can revoke his part of that vow. And if they get divorced, she is forbidden to anyone else. So therefore, it seems to be something that's only between the two of them, right? That's why he just revokes his part, right? Or that's only according to one opinion, but not according to the sages, right? Or maybe it's that every vow can be revoked by the husband unless she says, right, this is not between us, right? It's about another person, right? Another person can't get benefit from me. But if she says, I can't get benefit from him, again, when it's she can't get the benefit, he can revoke that because it affects his wife. Um, Now, we mentioned in the Mishnah, right? The husband can't bring her fruit from this country. This we said is not inui nefesh because first of all, another person can give it to her, as opposed to the husband. What if, right? And now here the another case: the wife takes a vow against eating 2 loaves of bread, right? So one is made out of fine flour, and therefore, if she doesn't eat it, she's suffering. So that's the inui nefesh, and the other is coarse flour. And the Gemara says maybe that's beino leveina, right? That's between the two of them because he wants her to be able to eat this bread. Therefore, he can revoke the vow of the inui nefesh, and right, maybe it includes the other, or no, right? Maybe he can only revoke the inui nefesh part, but not the other part. Okay, Daf 83. If a woman takes a vow to be a Nazir, just spoiler alert, that's our next Masachet next week. Next week we're going to be starting Masachet Nazir. It's similar to this Masachet because it's about taking a vow, but we're going to get into many details about being a Nazir. So let's say the woman takes a vow to be a Nazir, and she already separated out her sacrifice. At the end of the Nazir period, meaning it's generally for a limited period of time, you need to bring 3 sacrifices. If she already separated out those sacrifices and then the husband revokes the vow, now we have a problem because what does she do with that sacrifice or the sacrifices? So the Gemara explains she can bring the sin offering because, as we know, that's something that's serious, but she cannot bring the olah, right, the burnt offering, because again, that is right. Again, that cannot be brought if there is an uncertainty whether or not you need to bring this sacrifice. Let's say she became a Nizira, and then a Nazarite, and then she became impure, right? When you're when Nazir, you're not allowed to become tameh, you're not allowed to become impure. And then her husband revoked it. So she becomes impure, and then he revokes the vow. She brings, again, the sin offering because she became impure. Not, right, again, because she became impure, and you cannot, right, revoke something partially, and therefore that would not work. He revoked it fully, but she still brings one of those sacrifices. The next Mishnah on the bottom of Daf 83, the Mishnah says, let's say she says, I won't get benefit from anyone, right? He cannot revoke it because it's not inui nefesh, right? She can still eat from food that is set aside, or produce that is set aside for poor people, right? This is specifically, in Hebrew, it's called leket, shichacha, and peah. These are the 3 gifts that we leave in the field for the poor, and though they're seen as not being owned by anyone, therefore she can eat from that. Let's say a person says, this is not the wife, but let's say a person says, Kohanim and Leviim, priests and Levites, can't get benefit from me. They can just take it by force, right? Again, what are they taking? The trumot and maasrot, right? The tithes and the gifts that you need to take. If, let's say, you say this particular Kohen or Levi cannot benefit from me, another one can come and take those gifts and not those particular people. So now the Gemara explains, right? If she says, I won't get any benefit from anyone, he can't revoke it, that seems to imply that she can still eat from the husband, right? It seems that he's not included in all people, right? Or she can't eat from the husband, but she can eat from leket, peah, and shechacha, right, from the gifts to the poor. Or maybe she can eat from him, but if they get divorced, then she needs to go and get the other types of food. Daf 84, right? So we say We also see that that when she made a vow against having relations with any Jew, right, with anyone, the husband was included in that vow. So how does that work, right? And he revokes his part. So it seems that when she takes a general vow, he is included. So the Gemara says no, right? This case is different because it's clear when she's talking about having relations, it's clear she's talking about her husband because that's really the only person she can have relations with. But when we're talking about food, it's not necessarily the case. The Gemara now asks, why doesn't our Mishnah mention that she can eat from Ma'aser Ani? So this is just important to understand how the tithing process works, right? When a person who's a farmer, the person harvests their produce. When they get all the produce, they need to separate different things. So we have truma, which goes to the kohen. We have maaser that goes to the levi, and then depending on the year, there are two different things that can be separated. On year 1, 2, 4, and 5, we separate something called maaser sheni, right? A second tithe, and this is something that the farmer themselves needs to take up to Jerusalem and eat that in Jerusalem. The Mishnah explains that you don't have to necessarily take that orange. You can actually redeem it onto a coin. Then you collect all the coins. Then you take a trip to Jerusalem. You buy yourself a nice big shawarma in the old city, and now you've fulfilled your obligation for Maaser Sheni. On year, what am I talking about? Year 1, 2, 3. That's in a Shemitah cycle, right? Year 7 is Shemitah. So I said 1, 2, 4, and 5 is Maaser Sheni, meaning you keep it, you just eat it in Jerusalem. Year 3 and 6 is a year of Maaser Ani, where you separate for the poor people in your community. So if we're separating for the poor people, why didn't our Mishnah mention that she can eat from this Maaser Ani? So there's actually a machloket if there is benefit to the person who distributes the Maaser Ani, meaning the fact that I can give my neighbor or my plumber, my teacher, right? So if I can decide who it goes to, then maybe I get some sort of benefit. Or no, what's benefit when it has to do with money, right? But this does not have value, therefore it's not seen as benefit, right? Again, if it's seen as value, so then she can't eat it because she's not allowed to get benefit from another person. But if no, then she can eat it. So the Gemara says no. Everyone agrees that that if you didn't separate Maaser Ani, the food is forbidden to eat. Sorry. When we're talking, the Gemara now talks about dmai, right? Dmai is when we talk about produce that were from a person who we're not sure if they're observant. Do we need to separate all of these things? So the Gemara says that for trumot, because it's very serious, it's biblical in nature, even people who were ignorant still knew that they needed to separate trumot. But maybe for Maaser Ani, maybe they didn't really know about that, and therefore maybe they weren't careful to separate it. The Gemara then concludes that really there are two types of Maaser Ani. If you give it to poor people from your own home, so then it's obvious that the owner is getting benefit, and therefore she can't eat that type of Maaser Ani. However, Maaser Ani that's distributed in the granary, where it's just left for people to take it, then she can take it from there because again there is no benefit from that. And we continue with this idea. The Gemara tells us that if priests can just take the truma, like we mentioned in the Mishnah, so then it shows that, again, the giving out isn't valuable because if they can just take it, so then they just take it. But the end of the Mishnah seems to imply that there is value or benefit from the priest taking the trumot, the gifts. So the Gemara says, really, there is a machloket if there is value to this benefit, and the Gemara is going to continue this discussion next week. So next week, that's it. That's our week of 7 dapim. They were quite short, so we were able to finish them pretty quickly. Just a reminder that next week we will be finishing the Masechet, and then I think the following week I'll give an introduction. We'll see how much time we have next week, if I give the introduction next week or the following week. So I want to wish everyone a Shavua Tov, a great week, and a Shabbat Shalom, and see you next week.